Hello, guys. Welcome to this new episode of Mind Podcast, Webcast, Debates. आप कुछ भी गिन लो. But it's a special Mind Podcast. It's not happening on the weekend. It's happening on a weekday after a very important event that has happened in India. Basically, yesterday or the 5th of August, which now seems to be known in Indian history as a very important date for multiple reasons for what happened last year. But this is not to discuss the Kashmir thing, although three of us would love to talk about Kashmir as well. But this is to discuss the Bhoomi Pujan that happened at the Ram Janmabhoomi temple for the Ram Mandir to be constructed in Ayodhya. So Prime Minister Narendra Modi went to the site and did a Sashtang Namaskar, and at 12:44 the Bhoomi Pujan happened. It started before, but that's when it was placed there. And the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, Yogi Adityanath, Governor of UP, Anandiben Patel, and the Chief of the Sar Sanchalak of the RSS, Mohan Bhagwat, were present at the Pujan. So a lot has been said, a lot has been discussed. We are here to give you our take on what the events that have happened, on what this means for India going forward, what is the political meaning of this, and for what this means for Uttar Pradesh, which is goes to elections as well in about a year and a half. But apart from that, we also want to discuss in the last part about what this means for Hindus across the world as well, especially Hindu Americans, since a lot of our listeners do happen to tune in from US, UK, and so forth. So with me, I've got a panel to discuss this. My fellow compadre, Pramod Kumar Buravalli, co-founder of Mind Makers. How are you, Pramod?
I'm blessed to be on this Ramcast.
अगर 250 एपिसोड के बाद मुझे still आपका बायो देना पड़ेगा, तो I don't know what the hell our listeners have been doing for the last 200.
I said Ramcast because I thought we were going to talk about Mandal Kamandal, but now because of our esteemed guest, we are also going to talk about Bhoomandal.
देखो, if you get me into Mandal Kamandal, both you and Neha know that I will mute you both and just talk about Indian politics for 30 minutes. So, ideas अंदर आ रहे. But I would like to introduce our next guest, author, columnist, founder of Shaktitva, Neha Srivastava, and Mind Podcast alumni, as I always like to call her when I introduce her. Neha, how are you?
Namaste everyone. I'm so happy to be here. This is actually the first formal conversation I'm having about Ram Mandir, so I'm very excited. Because like all the emotions are popping up, I need to get them out.
I forgot to give the most important part of your bio. Resident of Uttar Pradesh, right? Because हम लोग तो we can all say, but this means a lot more to UP folks from UP, and why? Neha will talk about that. Right.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm not a resident right now, but home is where the heart is. Yes.
We have this slogan. We have this slogan or a saying in Gujarati. कि ज्या वसे गुजराती त्या वसे गुजरात. Wherever the Gujaratis are, they take Gujarat with them. So exactly. Our Prime Minister is the living embodiment of that. But I'm not again going into that. But let's talk about the significance of this moment, right? Because after the Supreme Court decision, and again, I would like to say unanimous 5-0 decision, another thing that a lot of people from the left forget to talk about is the Archaeological Survey of India, the ASI report, right? What did the ASI report mean, the significance of that, and so forth. So I would like us to talk about that. So Pramod, let me get your first thoughts, and then we'll go to Neha, and then we'll give a nuanced discussion of what this means. Yeah.
So my first thoughts were that I spent a lot of the day in anticipation and immerse myself with prayer, immerse myself with a silent recognition of all the people that I knew and I have heard of and I've seen sacrifice their entire lifetimes just to see if their Aradhya Daivam or Aradhya Devata in Rama at least can he have a decent temple or a thought of having a decent temple. So for me, it was the happiest day. I called it the Hindu Independence Day, August 5th, because of various reasons. It's an unshackling of the colonial mind, and no better place than Ayodhya, where my Aradhya Devam Rama is going to make a comeback after 3 years. I think that's the timeline they're saying. So I have mixed feelings, emotional feelings, very spiritually. It is creating a very big pull for me, so much so that I would like to compete with Miss Lucknow here to actually buy property in Ayodhya and settle there sometime in the future, if I can. It has been a lifetime dream of mine to at least have a small little place where I can, do my uh, sit under a tree and just do nothing and be in that land. So it's a very big thing. Also, just on the other side of things, Rama is a cultural and civilizational, person, right? So when I was seeing these wishes coming in from Korea, all of these other people from Thailand, and it just gives you such a feeling of surreal sort of atmosphere. Because imagine in 3 years, Nehaji, Adit, that there will be an international airport in Ayodhya which will have more flights than possibly any other city other than the 4 metro cities. Can you imagine that? कि कैसे transformation होने वाला है? मेरे रोंगटे खड़े हो रहे हैं कि imagining the things that are in store for us.
So, and I'm going to go to Neha next. What you said, basically, you gave a very personal perspective of what this means, right? What has this historically meant? Before we even get into this, I don't know why I didn't do this first, but please, if you haven't listened already, go back a couple of episodes where Dimple and I interviewed the sister of the Kothari brothers, who talked about their struggle and what they faced in 1990. I'm really telling you, pause this and listen to that first and then come to this, because that was 30 years ago, and that story has still not been told as many times as it should have to as many people, right? So if we are managing to reach a wider audience via this podcast, I want to tell you guys, please listen to that. But Neha, what I wanted to ask you was that, of course, let us know like what you personally feel about this and stuff. But civilizationally, right? I'm going to quote a quote that Congress themselves have forgotten, that one of their leaders said, their prime minister said, that India is a young country and an old civilization, right? Wasn't this this reactions from different parts of the world testament to that we are an old civilization of how many years? I'm not even going to date us, but that people are reacting to this. So what is your take on this?
So I warned you this is going to happen. So I'm already tearing up, so don't blame me. But the fun thing is, I grew up most of my life I grew up in Lucknow. Then I went to Noida for my bachelor's, 4 years there. And in this my entire life, I've not been to Ayodhya.
Wow.
It's only a few 100 kilometers away from my place. You can drive up to there, but we've never been. And the reason is that we couldn't bear to. Sometimes we would take the trip to Kashi, and then usually you do Prayag, Ayodhya, Kashi, like it's a circuit usually. But for some reason, we skip Ayodhya. Even recently, my cousin from Mumbai, I think a few years ago, she wanted to sort of tour the state and go to these spiritual places. So we went everywhere. We didn't go to Ayodhya. She asked me, and I was like, I'm not ready. And one of the reasons behind that is that 4 generations of my family have been involved with this. Like, I don't even consider I haven't done anything. Like, I didn't get the privilege of doing any sort of kar seva, unfortunately. But 4 generations have been involved in different ways. Some contributed intellectually. Every single, at least every single prominent member of my family that I know from my father's generation has contributed in some way or the other, whether it's through donations or through sending the eat that they showed, or like actually going up there. My father was there in 1990. And after the whole 89 thing, right? Like before that, Ramlala used to be for some, like at least my grandmother told us that for some time Ramlala used to be worshipped in the prangan, in the masjid prangan. Like it was, the masjid structure was still there, but in the prangan there used to be a little bit of worship. Then after 89, after 89 to 90 incident, the riots broke out. we were affected. Like I was barely like I was 5 years old, but I still remember that was a very like that emotional impact of those riots. I know that my family sort of hid me away in a room, and we stayed there all night, and even the next day we weren't sure if we should step out. And then we didn't know where my father was, where my brother was. We didn't know if they're coming back home. It was not good. And after that, we heard the news that Ramlala had been shifted into a makeshift tent in the aftermath. And I still remember I don't remember exactly how my family reacted to it, because I was very young. But every single time growing up, when the conversation of Ayodhya would come up, like there would be a newspaper article, or there would be some image somewhere, somebody saying that I went to see the Ramlala or something, like some conversation happened. My grandmother would be like, she would just shake her head and just go inside her room. So being a child, I used to follow around my grandmother. So I would ask her like what happened, and she'd say, I can't bear the thought that the greatest what can be a bigger failure for an entire civilization, that we had one job, right? Like he's like our child. Ramlala is like in the baby form, and we can't even give him a decent place to live. Right? He's sitting in a tent. We've left our baby in a tent, is what she would say.
I think to expand on your point, sometimes people forget that it's not just the temple itself, but the city of Ayodhya itself that occupies such a big significance in Indian civilization. Prime Minister Modi alluded to this. So there is obviously the Ram temple. In Jain scriptures, many Tirthankars were actually born in Ayodhya, having some sort of a relation to the Ikshvaku dynasty. So it's in Indian civilization ke liye bhi, this is a very, this is sort of an epochal moment. What I sort of found very disturbing is there were a few people, like, the term WhatsApp university is used by the left very. There were left members of the WhatsApp university posting messages that Ram Charitra Manas was composed some 50 years after Babri Masjid was done. So Ram Charitra Manas was this talking about this fictional character Ram and stuff like that, right? So it is unbelievable the amount of, we talk about colonial sort of history thing. It's unbelievable the amount of ignorance that existed in a lot of people who were opposing that. So what do you respond to the people like those who make such weird allegations? Any one of you can go first. I'm sorry, I didn't take a specific.
I honestly, at this point, I simply say to them, you do not understand us. I don't know who you speak for. The elites and there is there's a lot of intellectual commentary going on Twitter. Sri Ram is not this, Sri Ram is not that, Sri Ram is this and he's not this, and really there's a lot of, after this, especially after yesterday, we saw a lot of backstabbers of the Congress who actually were supposed to stand with us. Now they're trying to do Jagrata and they're trying to do all this Nautanki Puja. But the fact of the matter is that they betrayed us. Right? We used to vote for them. Congress used to be a party where there used to be a space for the subaltern Hindu. There used to be a space where you could wear a tilak and go to your office. Now you are actually judging a prime minister for simply doing pujas. Right? What madness is this? You are actually shaming, and this is not, I'm not even talking about the Ram Janmabhoomi inauguration. The first day, he is a Hindu guy, right? He is a Hindu guy. Every president who's elected here has been Christian in America. After every election, they all go for a national prayer breakfast. Yes. Right? Yet there is a guy who's a Hindu guy who's going to go to the temple, and you're mocking him and shaming him for simply practicing his faith. So you've made it impossible for Hindus to exist in India. So where they're not constantly being shamed for simply wearing, it's maddening, right? And now you are pretending that you understand us. Priyanka Gandhi Vandara is pretending that she somehow speaks for the Brahmins of UP. What madness is this, right? You don't even know us, right? You're talking about Shashi Tharoor is pretending that Sri Ram is a civilizational ideal and whatever. What Nautanki? Right? We knew how you treated Sri Ram. You constantly backstabbed him, and now they are saying apparently that ye naya aaya hai market mein ki the people who are the universal appeal of Ram and Sanatan Dharma cannot be commandeered by those who chant either hymns or slogans. He belongs to all humanity. For Hindutva, Ram is a god to be worshipped.
No,
Ram to be worshipped is Hindutva. People who worship Ram is Hindutva. Then what is the difference? Then why do you pretend that there is a difference between Hindutva?
But let me interject here. I don't think it is ignorance or it is arrogance. It is connivance of pure evil, of how they are trying to humanize Rama and try to make that person as a historical personality, a person that existed with multiple personalities and multiple so they are going to try to study him now that this is going to be an academic project.
I understand the intellectual argument, but for a second, let's understand that these people are, at least the Congress party, is not intellectuals, right? They are representatives of the people. The idea in a democracy is when you vote for somebody, you elect somebody who speaks for you in the parliament, right? You take our votes and you speak the bhasha of some JNU professor. You do not speak our bhasha, so you do not represent us. Then when we elect grassroots politicians, you shame them. You are mocking our people who can't speak English. You mock them in the parliament. You mock them. You mocked Sadhvi Ritambara for speaking in the tone that she speaks. So you mock Uma Bharti. These are not upper caste people. These are not elites. Right? These are our voice, and you mock them simply for wearing saffron. What possible crime has saffron done to you? Right? So this, I understand there is an intellectual argument to be had in what they're trying to do to Christian Protestant reformation, but this is not about that even, right? You're basically backstabbing.
I want to actually make a good point. Not a good point. Good or not, you guys decide. I want to make a point. I meant there was on Twitter, I saw a trend by some folks who are like, from some folks from Tamil Nadu. I don't know if they were DMK supporters or not, but they were saying something like our king is Ravanan, because and not Rama. And into my first thought was,
why they live in Lanka or what?
No. Forget that. Ravanan was a Shaivite, and you guys claim to be atheists. So first, you are all Shaivites, no? That is you. Because if you are king, do you accept a Shaivite? Because he was a devout Shaivite, right? I mean, forget all that.
And he ran his kingdom according to dharma, or at least what he thought was dharma. So, there is a disagreement on that.
That just shows the stupidity of this argument. That if you don't want a Ram temple, say why you don't want it or why you don't believe in this. Don't come up with this nonsense theory saying my king is Ravanan. I mean, what sort of nonsense?
Another thing I recently tweeted also, so yesterday I am kind of giving you a sneak peek of on the past 3 days I've been compiling very beautiful bhajans recorded by Hindu women from all over the world to celebrate the temple. And this was like an expression they were naturally singing, and they were posting in the little, in our group where we have like Shaktitva group. And so I said, can I compile that in a video? So like some people said they will give it to me, but because of then people get formal, no? So it took some time to compile it, and now it's compiled. And I'm not kidding you. The same time when I went to Twitter and I saw some stupid tweet saying that Sri Ram is not worshipped in South India. And ironically, the videos that I have Ram Bhajan that I was getting, or at least 5 of them are Telugus. Okay, so I was saying clearly, no, we have never met a Telugu person to claim that Sri Rama is not worshipped in South India. And then now, Abhi, if you go to that video, it's on YouTube. There are 18 artists, there are 20 songs. Out of that, there are 7 language representations. And the majority, I had to actually say no to some of the Telugu submissions because I was like, yaar, ye pura Telugu ho jayega. So this and there are Tamil, there are Malayalam, there are Telugu, and there are Hindi, there are Awadhi Bridge Bhasha, and all of these submissions are there. But I'm just saying, like, this madness. This is what I say. You don't represent us. You don't know us. You don't understand what moves the ordinary Hindu of India. It's as simple as that. You are trying to embark on a social engineering project which has failed. And you are too loath and too elitist to admit that it has failed. Yeah. You wanted us to detach us from our astha, and you have failed in that. And so now you're basically angry and ranting.
Yogendra Yadav, the eternal social scientist, wrote a piece on print about the failure of secularism with the event on 5th, and I think Shekhar Gupta published it with much pomp, and kind of slightly agreed to it, but also saying that this is his opinion. This is a project that, again, the reason why I call the August 5th day a post-colonial milestone day, because it has seen so many of the subterranean theories that were in play collapse like a pack of cards, and they are so so distraught right now. I think Nehaji, you wanted to show some tweets, but I was seeing a collage of tweets that somebody beautifully made, and the anguish these so-called left liberals were showing, that the kind of disgust, it is unbelievable, the bile and hatred that they were putting it out there.
Oh, I have that.
Yeah, if you want to show it, yeah, that was unbelievable. Somebody shared it, and my mother was saying, I mean, these are the most disgusting. Yeah, this is the one I'm talking about.
Yeah. So now it's I'm not, like, see, some of these things, like this, to an outside observer, this may seem rational, right? If you're an American citizen, you're watching this, it may seem rational. Like, yes, there was all these people are saying is that there was a destruction of the mosque, but you also have to see what they're not saying. What they're not saying is that conclusive evidence was presented, which proved that there was a Ram Mandir before the demolition of the mosque.
Which is
another element
that the ASI report by KK Mohammed in Bivilal has been completely forgotten.
So, and then on top of that, they keep saying these are WhatsApp historians and whatnot. KK Mohammed is a WhatsApp. He worked in ASI. Meenakshi Jain has more PhDs than all of them combined, right? And then they are being called as WhatsApp historians. So basically, WhatsApp historian is short for any historian I don't like, right? And so who tells the truth? Then another element यहाँ पर आप देखिए, nobody is mentioning about the historical evidence. People who were proven, who had to admit in court that they did not actually know anything about anything, are now still writing articles saying that there is no evidence.
And none of them spoke a thing on Hagia Sophia when that happened. And nobody even said ki, maybe that is also equally out, at least monkey balancing jo karte na.
Yeah, but I think for us to fall into that discussion, because I think the Ram Temple and the Hagia Sophia discussions are two completely separate discussions, because there is not even an acknowledgement, right, on one side. The Hagia Sophia thing, I mean, I personally think they're not even comparable. Of course, we don't agree with what has happened there, but here the case is there is historical evidence, there is reports, and they are willing to ignore everything over just for some phony concept of secularism or whatever. But
it's not secularism. This is no. This is erasure of Hindus, right?
I'm not saying the classical definition. I'm saying their version.
No, by any definition, this is not secularism, and the good thing is they're not even making pretense of it anymore. Right?
Yeah.
What this is actual Hindu erasure, because now they've graduated to the argument that Hinduism only has caste, and therefore caste is a social evil. So in order to eradicate social evils, you need to eradicate Hinduism. Now that is out in the open. At least pehle it was a pretentious thing. Now it's out in the open. So that's a positive thing that has come out of it. Another element यहाँ पे देखो कि none of them is mentioning that for 500 years we fought a legal case. For out of those 500 years, 492 years, out of those 492 years, 472 years you gaslit us, right? When we were under Mughal rule, at that time, chalo, we had some consolation ki we don't have our own sarkar, so nobody going to listen to us. That's fine. Then we went to colonial rule. We still had that argument ki bhai, the British are not, they are not our people. We don't have our own land. We don't control the government, and we don't control the laws. And so therefore we cannot make a legitimate case. They're going to be biased against us, right? So there is you tend to be a little bit resigned against colonialism. That happens. But then what you're saying is ki now that is, so we are going to ignore those 472 years. Then we got our own constitution. We supposedly became independent, and then you still gaslit us for 50 years. Then in 1990, the emotions ran high, which was not very different from what happened in America not too long ago. Christopher Columbus is sitting in the river right now for a reason, because there is a limit to how much people can tolerate. Right? So now colonial statues all over the world are coming out. And so the same thing happened in Ayodhya. Uske baad, there was a reactionary riot, which was not started, but there was a reaction to the demolition. So if white people start rioting against black people for taking down racist statues, that's what happened, right? And then there was pushback. So now those riots have become the symptom of everything. And then uske baad bhi, we still went on to make a legal argument. Right? If it was majoritarian hate, we need to wait for another 20 years. Right? If all we needed to do was build on top of it, we didn't even, why would we bother to go to the court and do the excavations? And we already knew this, right? We knew this for 500 years.
And I find this argument the absolute funniest, where people say that, we can disagree with the Supreme Court decision. I'm like, oh, you absolutely can. And in a democracy, you can disagree with the court's, but that doesn't mean your disagreement is what will happen.
Or a disagreement. Tell me this. You can disagree with the decision, but you tell me this. So what is the disagreement with facts? How can you disagree with facts? We actually dug up remnants of the temple from under that thing, and you're disagreeing with facts now.
Facts are a right-wing conspiracy, don't you know? According to them. But we are getting close to the last part of the discussion, and the last, because this is such an emotional topic for all of us that we already went about 10 minutes over time than what we thought. But I want to wrap this part up, and the last 5 minutes we're going to focus about what this means for people around the world, right? And Neha has a couple of very interesting things to talk about that. But Pramod, your final thoughts on this part of the discussion, and then we'll come to that.
On one side, you see these racial symbols imposed by the Western colonial project falling down. On one side, my Rama is rising up. What else can I say? This is what I have been working all of my life, is to go and pray in that temple. That is all I want to do, is sit and just pray for my Aradhya Daivam, who was born there. And I had to go through all of these processes set and imposed on my own people by my own people. These legal processes, this whole excavation, when the truth was very well known to us. And I want to say sorry to my future generations that we took so long. If my daughters tomorrow ask me, and Neha ji knows how inquisitive my daughters are, is why did you Hindus, you lazy buggers, you took so many hundreds of years to prove a fact that you knew all along, and you had to go through all of this process. You imposed democracy on yourself. You imposed secularism on yourself. You said we will only follow the court of law. To my daughters, it will be very funny, but unfortunately, I have to explain that.
No, I disagree. However long it took, due processes were followed. There was a Supreme Court decision.
Hey, but
I know Pramod is making the emotional argument, right? But I'm
actually going to support you, but you continue.
I'm saying there are some historical moments where you proved beyond a shadow of doubt, using science, using the legal system, and and had a political mandate to do what you decided to do. And which is why, and not just on a national level, even on the state level, let's not forget, the Yogi Adityanath government has more than 3/4 of the seats in the UP Assembly, more than 300 seats, right? And I don't think such a majority in UP has happened for a long, long time, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
But I am trying to, I'll just conclude. Just give me half a minute. I know Neha ji also wants to intervene here. What I meant to say is, in the future, when my daughter goes to Krishna Janmasthana, which we've gone many times there, and it's very clear that, one place there is the jail cell in which Bhagwan Krishna was born, and right the next wall is there is a masjid right beside it, and Gyanvapi is also very apparent, right? Such clear encroachments are visible for the future generations, and here we are, their ancestors showing that ये हम 500 साल लगा देंगे बेटा. Patience is a big virtue. तुम भी यही झेलना पड़ेगा तुमको, और कोर्ट का आपको खटखटा करना पड़ेगा. That is what I am ashamed of. That is what I feel sad कि मैं अपनी बेटियों को क्या बोलूंगा जाके 500 साल और रुक जाओ.
But I'll tell you I'll tell you before Neha comes in. एक चीज मैं बताऊंगा. It's a little frivolous, but I have to tell you the quality of opposition to this has gone down so ridiculously. Shashi Tharoor, whom Neha mentioned, said PM Modi congratulated 130 crore Indians when he spoke at the Ram Mandir yesterday. But India's population is estimated to be 138.438 crores in mid 2020. An omission of 8 crore people is worrying to many after CA NRC. If inadvertent, a correction should be made. So somebody said, I think it was Karthikeya Tanda or someone, that when you said your tweet, you also omitted 4,385 people when you said just 8 crore people. And given what Congress's conduct was post 1984 Indira Gandhi's thing, it is very worrying that you omitted 4,300 people.
You are being very unfair to Shashi Tharoor. Really unfair.
I am actually acknowledging his skills as a comedian on Amazon Prime.
Oh.
He came with a special.
Pramoji, I'll counter your point because see, I know where you're coming from, right? I know I've as I told you, right? I've seen this frustration, and I can't lie and say that I have not felt that frustration. It like, you know, when your own baby is lying in a tent, it's, as I said, like, you know, he is Ramlala is you know, UP ka wo. So if you can't, like, all of these intellectual arguments sound very stupid when you're saying, you know, my baby is literally lying in the tent. How can you let him be like that? And I understand your frustration, but also, and I also appreciate that, first of all, we stand on the shoulders of giants, right? Every single generation of our ancestors fought in the way they thought best, right? Like there were unprecedented scenarios. There was literally Hindus were relegated to second class citizens in their own states. They went on to from Muslim rule, it went on to colonial rule. We went through mass murders, we went through mass rapes, and we went through complete destruction of entire, like, the attacks on our psyche. It was overwhelming. And one more thing, one quick thing that we tend to forget when we are being too critical of ourselves is that no other civilization has survived this. Right? No other ancient civilization has survived 2 waves of colonization and still stayed true and remembered their gods, remembered their culture, remembered and continued that unbroken tradition despite everything. We did that, and that was also important. And it is like, you know, modern, like we sit in our modern homes and we think that maybe more could have been done, but sitting in that environment, they still tried, right? And the fact that, and another very important thing is, the biggest contribution of our ancestors was that they transferred that psyche and that emotions, they preserved it and they transferred it to the future generations. Right? So whatever we do is also to their credit. The fact that you and Aadit and I are sitting in our our homes in America and still talking about it, that is a credit to our ancestors. So this is one point. And the other point, yes, you could say that, you know, maybe we could have, you know, raised it and we could have, like, waged a war and reinstituted the temple and whatever. But there is a permanence to this temple now. Right? And I'm not saying that now, at the very least, nobody can pretend to be just, to believe for justice and liberty and fairness and peace and still go and take that thing down. If you do that, right? And which is where AIMPLB's tweet is important, because they are reminding us of Hagia Sophia. And in that thing, there is nothing except majoritarian hate and anger and bigotry and absolute unbridled hate for Hindus, which would actually take you to a Hagia Sophia type solution. Right? Let's not pretend that the Turkish government has taken any moral step. It has taken any decolonizing step. It was driven out of hate for Christians, and the Christians were driven out of hate for pagans when they took on the. We did not. It is a credit to our civilization and our values that we did not succumb to that.
No, Neha, that is. I don't agree with the comparison for one reason alone. There were 5 acres that the Ayodhya district magistrate has awarded.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm not comparing. I'm showing you something else. I'm saying if the AMPLB is saying we are going to take the masjid, temple back, right? They're going to reinstall. Basically, what they're saying is, in Turkey we took the church and which is, and we've converted it into a mosque. So don't be very happy about your temple because we're going to make it into a mosque. So if you do that, you will show the world that you're not driven by any sort of liberty, peace, justice, or whatever like fancy terms you like to throw at us. What you're actually driven by is hate. It is hate for Hindus, and we did not succumb to that. We actually stood our ground. We stood by the ethos of our civilization. We did not succumb to majoritarian hate, and that itself is also a credit to our civilization.
I am getting just let one last rebuttal, not a rebuttal, but an agreement with the. Just one last thing is, I will agree to your good observation that we have to defer to the patience and the acumen of our ancestors. But I'm not sure our next generation will be so patient. I'm not sure about it. I just saw the Krishna Janmasthana.
Right? I'm not saying and patience is not what I'm arguing for.
Yeah,
I'm not arguing patience, right? Patience is a different matter. But the point is that whatever was thrown at us, we did our best. Right? We can sit in our room and we can talk about 1990 में ये कर लेते, वो कर लेते, ये वो कद्दू कतीर कर लेते. हम नहीं थे ना वहाँ पर. We don't know how would we react, right? We managed our best based on what we had, what awareness we had, what tools we had, and all of them were driven out of sheer commitment.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay. It wasn't, I wouldn't call it laziness, because at that time, realistically, what options did we have, right? गर्व से कहो हम हिंदू हैं was a revolutionary slogan 20 years ago. What the hell are we talking about, right? वो communal statement था, वो जो है उसके पीछे भाई तो like इतना बवाल हुआ था. So we had lost to that point and we came back, and that is a credit.
No, and while Neha gets ready for the second part or the last part of this discussion where we want to talk about the global thing, I want to end this part with one thing. It's a thread I did on the day, that when we talk about the whole thing about Jai Shri Ram and slogans, let's not forget in 1990, right after BJP came to power, Mulayam Singh Yadav and Kanchi Ram came together with a slogan that was coined by a BSP person or something, that Mile Mulayam Kashi Ram, Hawa mein ho gaye Jai Shri Ram, right? As a derogatory slogan to the Jai Shri Ram slogan. From there to Akhilesh Yadav now supporting the Ram temple, Mayawati sort of giving that has happened in our lifetime. From 1993.
I'm not supporting that, yaar. Abhi he was recently usne wo kiya tha.
I'm saying right now, politically, he cannot afford to oppose the Ram temple in UP. Can he? If he opposes that, he will be wiped out, right? And that is the change where after due process was followed, electoral things that happened, that the center of the Indian politics has changed.
No, I agree with you 100%. Now this is competitive Hindutva. Now who they are going to try to outdo themselves. I hope it is.
We are celebrating too early because the other side
I'm not celebrating. I'm just smiling right now.
What they are doing, actually, to be very honest, I really don't understand. Maybe I was talking to the people and I really don't understand what is Congress doing or like Congress and allies doing. Then let's say we buy the theory that they're trying soft Hindutva. If they are trying soft Hindutva, then why is the Bhai Behan doing this Pagalpanti? The Behan is saying Jai Shri Ram, and then Bhai is saying Ram is not going to live in this symbol of cruelty, injustice, and hate and whatnot. So then you have this guy Shashi who writes a freaking book on being a Hindu, and then he mocks all the Hindus who worship Sri Ram as a god. What strategy is this? I'm not even saying let's not talk about their actual beliefs. As a political strategy, on the most momentous occasion of Hindus around the world, you decide to say this. If you hadn't said anything, that would have been better politically for you, to be honest. So this is not even monkey balance, and this is just insanity, right?
Before this conversation goes off on any further tangents, Neha, what point do you have? Because we are no fans of Ashutosh Gowarikar films, so we'll have to end our podcast in less than an hour. So, what point did you have
So my limited point was yesterday, as you know, that I live in New York. And we had this planned that we were going to do a massive celebration on Times Square. So we had planned all these billboards that were going to go up. I know that I finally found the Hindu groups that planned it, and I thanked them for trying. And then then the whole thing started, right? The whole drama started. Now there is a distinction here. At least in India, the opposition is pretending. Political opposition is pretending to distinguish between Hinduism and Hindutva. Right? In India, they have actually shunned. In America, they have abandoned that pretense. Right? Even in India, Shashi Tharoor is also technically quote saying Hindutva is Hinduism, but he's not openly saying it because he also posted a picture before where he was comparing Hinduism and Hindutva and whatever madness. But in America, that entire pretense is dead. Right? So I wanted to show you some of the pictures that we saw yesterday that surfaced from the protest. Look at this. This was from anti-protest against us. They literally are saying Jai Shri Ram means murder. Right? This is not, Jai Shri Ram is not just a Hindutva thing. Jai Shri Ram is not a Hindutva icon. As we mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, people from Korea, people from Thailand, people from the entire world, revere Jai Shri Ram. Jai Shri Ram is the slogan of the masses. It is popular in Guyana. It is popular in Caribbean islands. It's not even Hindu. It's not even an Indian thing anymore. Right? Jai Shri Ram is the slogan by which people greet each other, or Hindus greet each other around the world. In ISKCON temples, Jai Shri Ram still reverberates. Right? You have so many Hindus in Poland, in Russia, in Africa, in Caribbean islands that are constantly saying Jai Shri Ram. This is not political anymore. You are blurring the lines between Hinduism and Hindutva for a reason. You're deliberately doing that. Other thing that I wanted to show you, then this one, right? So here, if you notice, what he's saying is that the universal appeal of Ram and Sanatana Dharma cannot be observed. But notice this line, right? The white line in red. For Hindutva, Ram is a god to be worshipped. So for people who worship Ram as a god is Hindus. People who worship Ram as a god is Hindutva, right? That is literally all Hindus. I don't know any Hindu who does not worship Ram. Now this one we saw, and then now this is the commentary that comes up, right? Systemic massacre and rape of thousands of Indian Muslims for the past 30 years. Okay, BJP came to power only barely 6 years ago. So basically what they're saying is that the Congress government was allowing this and doing this. So the lines between the Hindu, BJP RSS nahi hai. This has nothing to do with BJP RSS. Right? Now, according to this guy, Sonia Gandhi's government was supporting this.
Yeah.
Sonia Gandhi Manmohan Singh's government was supporting this. This is what their claim is.
If you go from 1990...
No, let me complete. 1 minute, let me... sorry?
No, go. I'm saying if you go from 1990 to 2020, from 91 to 96, there was Congress government. Then 2 years with Congress government support. 10 years UPA 17. And if you add Chandrasekhar and others in, 17 and a half out of 30 years were ruled by UP Congress.
So now here he is saying, he's tagging Hershey's company and saying that you're supporting pogrom by not BJP, not RSS, even the Congress governments, right? And so what is the commonality between all of us is we were Hindus, number one. Then here you have, this guy is comparing, the part that was cropped out because I didn't have any space, is basically a picture of people celebrating after Ayodhya. The text in Hindi says the people are celebrating and dancing on the occasion of the consecration of the temple. This fellow is saying that this is happening at the peak of COVID. Religion was whatever, and then this is speak against this hooliganism, right? So apparently dancing in celebration is hooliganism when you do it for Sri Ram. And look at the people who retweeted this, right? This is the South Asia Solidarity Initiative.
It's the idea.
Who are expressing solidarity with is not Hindus.
Exactly. Here, I also believe that they should have worn masks, but that's a separate debate. Not this.
No. Okay, yeah, of course. But let's not sit in America and tell people in India that they should wear masks.
Exactly. Okay. That's what I'm saying.
So
the idea is different.
Now this person, Suchitra Vijayan, is the lead character, and she exploits the names that sounds a little Hindu, so she exploits that fact. Now here she actually has twisted Ambedkar's words. So she is supposedly quoting Bala Saheb Ambedkar and saying, in every Hindu, the consciousness that exists, there is no Hindu consciousness of any kind. In every Hindu, the consciousness that exists is the consciousness of his caste, right? And that is the reason why Hindus cannot be said to form a society or a nation. What did Bala Saheb actually say? He said, he said, indeed, the ideal Hindu must be like a rat living in his own hole, refusing to have any contact with others. There is an utter lack amongst the Hindus of what the sociologists call consciousness of kind. Consciousness of kind is a sociological term where people sort of create a brotherhood with the other Hindus, right? So if you let's like with their own kind of people. So like white people will see a white person and feel solidarity or something of that sort. So he's lamenting that Hindus don't have that. Then he says there is no Hindu consciousness of kind. That is a sociological term. There is no any here, not of any kind. There is no Hindu consciousness of kind. In every Hindu, the consciousness that exists is the consciousness of caste. That is the reason why Hindus cannot be said to form a society or a nation. Now, what he's actually saying is he's lamenting that caste distinctions are dividing Hindus to the point that they do not have a joint consciousness.
So she is exactly saying the opposite and smartly positioned.
The pain in his words, because he's saying we are Hindus keep living like different people. They wear different clothes, they eat different food, they do not sympathize with each other because of caste. Like people are busy in their own Kayastha Samaj and Kamma Samaj and whatever Samajas, and they're not paying attention to what the larger problem is. So he's lamenting unity of Hindus, and here this woman is saying that to unite in Hindus is casteism. It's exactly opposite.
It's a very deliberate project, and if you notice, Nehaji, if you look at the attempt to delineate consciousness with Hinduism, did you see that attempt? That's also one of the subtle attempt they were trying to make.
But my summary point is that this has transitioned beyond politics, beyond BJP, the RSS, Yogi. It has nothing to do with anything. What they are, and pehle this was like we had discussed this intellectual argument that was being talked about in Indology circles. Now it is coming to the ground. Now, if you are a Hindu, you must abandon that Hinduism, because that Hinduism is the new whiteness. On top of that, there is a caste. There is a book, the ridiculous book that at least like the New York Times article that came out. I'm kind of basing the conclusions off of that, which is literally basing the blame for fascism, for Hitler's white supremacy also on Hindus. Like, I mean, like we are like the ultimate evil, like we are the original sin. Okay?
Colonialism ultimately, Aadit, colonialism भी हमारे ऊपर ही थोपेंगे, बोलेंगे आपके लोग हमारे पूर्वज थे. नहीं नेहा जी, वो बोलेंगे आपके लोग, हम मानते हैं आपके लोग हमारे पूर्वज थे, पहले हमको आपने कॉलोनाइज किया.
No, हो चुका है ये वाला. Aryan invasion theory was this, right?
In conclusion, the Hindus don't even not just have to carry their own past; they also have to carry the white past.
Look at the ridiculous, and no, but the book, you could think, अरे ये तो एक पागल औरत एक साइड में बोल रही है, ऐसा नहीं है. That book, Oprah bought 500 copies of that book and is now sending it to CEOs across the US. Oprah is supposedly friends with Deepak Chopra. That did not matter, right? There was no conversation. So now fascism is the fault of Hindus, white supremacy is the fault of Hindus, and to imagine saying this in a country that is so racially charged right now and directing all the hate against 1% minority religion just because they worship a different god than you.
I mean, excellent point. And I maybe in the next few weeks to come, maybe leading up to the US election, Neha, you and I have to have a follow-up conversation and expand this point further. But I'm flat out of time, but I'm glad you said what you did. I have to say a very funny thing though. I think the reason why Oprah is friends with Deepak Chopra is she might have grown fed up of his kind of Hinduism or his explanation of Hinduism, because he might have used 15,000 words to explain one. I'm joking. I'm being facetious, of course. But let's look at the serious point right here, right? The serious point is that there is so much misinformation being spread using false quotations that might be conveying different meanings just to fulfill the ideology. And what we haven't talked about is these protests were there about the Ram Mandir, but somehow Kashmir also crept in with these protests.
The larger point here is also this, that it doesn't...
Why I'm saying this, Neha, right? If people who are talking about Ram Mandir and are talking about minorities and stuff like that, and they're talking about the last 30 years, in the last 30 years, Kashmiri Hindus were also forced out of their homeland. Why do they not talk about that? Right? Why do...
Another important element here is that I will end with this. It doesn't matter what your politics is anymore. Right? It doesn't matter whether you like BJP or Modi or RSS or VHP or whatever you are. If you are a Hindu who loves Sri Rama, you are on target. If you are a Hindu who does not constantly apologize for existing, you are Hindutva. Right? There was recently I was doing some research on this. I found a master's thesis from University of Washington that said Hindu Mandir's executive council, a conference of all the Mandir executives that happens annually or biannually here in America, is Hindutva. And also on page 24, it says that Hindutva is equal to fascism. And so then the logic that person draws is that because he agrees that actually diverse groups, so first he says fascism because it is homogenization. Then he says diverse Hindu groups from Shakta tradition, Shaiva tradition all come up to that conference. He admits that. And then he goes on to say, but this is still Hindutva because they come together and discuss a pan-Hindu identity. So discussing a pan-Hindu problem, like discussing we are walking past our differences, we are finally making an attempt to walk past caste, walk past this sect and that sect. They are saying walking past those differences and attempting to unify is Hindutva. Right? So if you are a Hindu and you're trying to solve problems of your society without abandoning Hinduism, then it is Hindutva. So I want listeners who do not recognize, who cringe at the word Hindutva, or who have, mixed feelings about the politics of the land, or maybe don't even know about the politics of India. I want all of you to seriously think and listen to what the other side is saying, because you may not, feel anything when Aadit or Pramod or Neha are attacked, but they will come to your door, and it will happen sooner or later. This is how the gas chambers exercise began. This is how that propaganda began. This is how it begins, right? You first start caricaturing an entire group of people, millions and millions of people. You build up hate against them, and then it leads to lynching. And then you justify that lynching. That is what is happening. And unfortunately, the choices have been made for you. You do not have the luxury to make, politically correct statements and think that I may not be affected. That's my limited final point.
I think my conclusion, Aadit, and just give me half a minute on that, is step one was the Bhoomi Pujan. Step two is that those who are supportive of BJP, those who have done a lot of work for the BJP or who are on social media and who have good intentions for the BJP, have to convey that step two is not the construction of the Ram temple. That's already ongoing. Step two is to man up and tell America that next time you attempt to do these slight things, fund these projects, we will have to take action and take it very seriously and cut the ties with you as a country and as a civilization as a whole, once and for all, because we have pardoned you after the excesses, the colonial excesses in 1947. We have not uttered a thing against America. But if America continues to champion the neo-colonial state and tries to impose its thought processes using its deep state elements, we will have to stop doing business with you and have to...
Not happening with America itself, right? This, now what you said can be the position of the Indian government against, like, at a government level. But what happens of the millions of Hindus who are not Indians? Right? What happens to them? Right? And what happens to the people who are born as Americans, who are raised as Americans? They are also Hindus.
Everything cascades down to taking on the first and the biggest bully, Nehaji. If you don't take on this bully, you will never be able to bully and talk to a guy from Guyana or Suriname.
No, right now.
No, that argument does not work because it literally goes against the ethos that we're talking about. This is about Hindu unity, and we cannot abandon collateral damage we're not going to care about.
We'll bring you guys on to have a follow-up discussion on who the bully is and who the bullied are, but or who the bully was and who the bully is. But in the end, I think I would like to conclude our discussion with the following things, right? That first of all, it is very important to go back and read the books that, you know, shape the narrative on this. And I'm not saying the ideological narrative, just the facts, right? Read Hindu temples and what happened to them, right? By Sitaram Goel, Arun Shauri and others. Read Meenakshi Jain's A Flight of the Deities. There are so many books available. There are so many discussions available. There are so many webinars available. Go and read Neha's entire wall. Next time we'll tell Neha to have her camera flipped and she'll do a slow motion sort of video of her book.
Here.
We'll go from there. But really, so normally we end with recommendations and things like that. But since this podcast was of such a strange historical event, where we started from 400-500 years ago to the modern day political context, I want you guys to read these books and then write to us what you feel about it. Even if you completely disagree with us, guys, write to us, right? If you do not engage, discuss, and debate, we are not like the other side. We want your opinions to be heard, and we want to discuss with where there is an issue. So,
one book that I want to highlight, which is not talked about often in Hindutva circles, but it must be, is the entire body of writing of Sri Aurobindo. He was the original and the most fantastic man ahead of his time on decoloniality. He has, we kind of, because at that time we were so mentally colonized, we weren't able to understand what he's saying. But pick those books out, pick those articles, pick those essays, read it through. There's a vast body of information that is.
I'll give an added, or maybe even Vivekananda. Right, but that's Vivekananda is before Sri Aurobindo as work. So Swami Vivekananda is obviously must read. I'll throw in an added incentive. Go to Auroville, go to Puducherry, stay in the ashram, enjoy that atmosphere, and then read Aurobindo. Once this COVID is over, maybe take a trip to there and broaden your horizons. But
Sri Aurobindo is not just a spiritual, he should also be read as a decoloniality thinker. He's a very, very important.
I'm just throwing an added incentive कि थोड़ा travel भी हो जाएगा COVID के बाद.
So Dharampal.
My recommendation is the smart video that Team Shaktitva came up with on Raksha Bandhan. I showed it to my daughter, by the way. She liked it very much. So these are the ways you have to build on the narrative. These are really quirky, very nice take on the narrative that is built against us. But well done, Team Shaktitva.
Support our friends at Shaktitva. Support our authors who write for Mind and Shaktitva. All we're all together in this whole discussion thing, and maybe we can, or sare vichar manthan, maybe we'll butt our heads more often on the podcast and come to the conclusions. So thank you so much, Pramod and Neha, for joining. Couple of things, guys. I know a lot of you listen to us on SoundCloud. If you want to listen to the screenshots and stuff, you'll have to go to the YouTube page to listen, watch the video. I'm not going to be posting individual screenshots. I'm sorry. Second, please follow us on on Twitter. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and our SoundCloud page. So follow Shaktitva as well. And you can always write to Pramod, Neha, or I, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you so much, guys, and hope for a more invigorating discussion very soon.